Good evening, kings and queens. Welcome to another video. I know I have been gone for a little while, but the reason for that is I have been playing at the University Sports South Africa tournament in PLAAJE University in Kimberley. As you can tell there, it was a six, yeah, it was actually a 5-day tournament. Monday to Friday, we played 9 rounds, 90-90, time control, 30-second increment per move, pretty standard. Yeah, it was very interesting. I started off, I think I was ranking 16th. I've ended up ranking 54 with 5.5 points, so it was a pretty rough tournament. But I cut myself some slack. I'll take it because I hadn't played chess in a long while, and of course, hence this YouTube channel, because I'm recovering as a young adult player and I want to take you guys through my journey along with me. So I hope you do enjoy the ride. And yeah, for those of you who don't know, just a history lesson here. Kimberley is known for a landmark called the biggest man-made hole in the world, which is called the Big Hole, basically, because they were digging for gold, I think diamonds, back in the day. But anyway, enough of that. So that is here in South Africa. I was representing the Wits chess team. We actually finished okay, I'll tell you all of the rest of the details, how it was going on throughout the tournament, throughout these recaps, which I'll be popping out throughout this week. The tournament's finished, I'm back home, and yeah, without any further ado, these are some of my notes that I did briefly on ChessBase, because today, yes, we won't be using chess.com. I'll be just going through the lines with you here in ChessBase and discussing ideas and all that stuff. I'm here to actually sit down and do a more thorough analysis for this game, and perhaps even put it in chess.com so that it can give me feedback. But anyway, let's dive into the game. I had the white pieces here and I played e4. My opponent played d6. This is the Pirc or Pirc Defense. And this is known as the miscellaneous systems here, according to ChessBase, as you can read right over there. So my opponent here went for d4. I went d4. My opponent went knight f6, knight c3, and then c6. Now, this is the beginning of the miscellaneous lines, because usually in the Pirc defense, like, you play something like g6, right? Then white goes maybe bishop e3, play like g6, maybe, I don't know, queen d2, then you have this c6 line, with the same idea of like queen side sort of like attack, basically, where the queen also comes to a5 over here, right? Same ideas, basically. However, in this game, my opponent didn't actually fianchetto the bishop. This is not what he played. The bishop, he didn't fianchetto. Instead, after c6, I actually went on about my business, just bishop e3. He played queen a5, which I thought was very interesting, but it's still sort of in the spirit of the Pirc or Pirc. I think we'll just call it the Pirc defense for now. Yeah, let's just settle for Pirc. And then queen d2, well, I'm indicating that I want to go queenside castling and just bulldoze him throughout in the center, because he's not developing his king. His pieces. His king is not castled. It's still stuck in the center. As soon as I castle, I'll just shred open the center with maybe like e5. That's the idea. So he plays e5 himself. Now this is an indication that he's no longer gonna play the classical line like of g6, of this g6 move, and then this bishop e7 over here and all that stuff. Bishop g6, right? He's indicating that he sort of wants to play passively and in a way that's sort of non-confrontational, I guess. So just knight f3, right? And also, you need to note here, it's bad to take this pawn, just so you understand. It takes, and then now this bishop has great scope over this diagonal, and it's uncontested, by the way. So it's not really a good thing to play. It's really not good, so I would not take there, hence just knight f3. So after e5, I just played knight f3, right? Just developing the piece, also hitting the knight, hitting the pawn on e5. And the game basically went on relatively okay. Bishop e2, and then here I played an inaccuracy, and as you can see, I marked it as a dubious move, bishop d3. And he played b5, and this is the best move. And the point is, he wants to chase away my knight with b4, right? Because if he chases my knight away with b4, the pawn on e4 is hanging. But had I played bishop d3 instead of bishop e2, this is also one thing you need to understand. So here I was supposed to go bishop d3 instead. This is what I was supposed to play, because now b4 and then this threat of b5, I mean b5 is this threat of b4 no longer scares me, because should the knight move, let me just demonstrate. Let's say castles, right? And then let's just say b4, just for an example, and then knight bd2. Should the knight move, the pawn here, this pawn over here, is no longer unprotected. It's actually well protected by the bishop on d3 over here, right? So that's why the bishop actually needs to go to d3 instead of e2. But I played bishop e2, which was already an inaccuracy. I was not really happy about this move, especially after my opponent played b5, now threatening b4 to remove basically the guard. And here the engine gave some funny lines. I thought of a3, right? But then I just thought b4, because I can't take. The rook is pinned to the queen over here. And so maybe something like that, knight h2, maybe knight takes on e4, then queen takes on b4. We can exchange here and I can take with the knight, or he can just go back and play queen c7. So I thought of this line, didn't really like it, I didn't go for it. And what I ended up finding was knight b1. Sometimes you have to go back to go forward, right? So now he's still hitting my pawn here on e4, right? However, my queen is also seeing his queen over here, and I'm hitting his queen as well. So we have this thing going on over there, so he can't really take. However, if he exchange into the queen, then I just develop the knight again to this different square over there, right? I can play that instead. So he chose not to, and he actually played the best move, queen c7 backwards, and I still have to deal with this nagging pressure over here. Now the engine here again just says I should go about my business, play something like queen d3 and then knight b d2, but I didn't really like that setup, so I went for bishop d3. Here he showed castled, but as you can see on the note I wrote, bishop d5 was better, fighting for the center. And the point is this, right? This is the point. He needs to strike now in the center, a well-timed move. Now, I cannot take with the pawn like this, because if that takes, right, he can take here with the knight simply. And, well, now he's hitting my queen, and I don't really, okay, I suppose I can play queen e2 and then play knight b d2 in the next move. But I didn't really want to go for the line. And I also thought after takes here, after pawn takes, which I honestly didn't think was great. This is also a fork. Let's just say new variation. And if takes, yeah, I just didn't really like something here. I think this was just gonna be a mess, but it seems like it was playable. I'm not quite sure, or maybe it takes there, I don't know. But it was going to be all over the show, right, with d5. But in fact, with d5 I was intending to go knight here, and then in fact the computer gives d takes, and then after bishop e2 he can play knight b d7, contesting this knight here on e5. This was one thing he also could have played, but he did not. Instead, my opponent castled, and now I played d takes myself because I didn't want this d5 move coming in. So I played d takes e5, he played d takes e5, and I played queen c3. And the point of this move is I am in fact, was it queen c3 now? I believe I didn't play queen c3 now. I think there's something wrong here. Because after queen c3, I remember that he couldn't actually come. Oh yes, queen c3, because queen b4 doesn't, I mean bishop b4 doesn't work, right? He can't pin me. And he played knight b d7. I played knight b d2. He played rook e8. Then he blundered the pawn here. Bishop takes on b5, which was a good move. He cannot recapture because the queens are staring at each other. The queen on c7. You need to understand that the queen here on c7, this queen is looking at that queen, so he couldn't really take my bishop there. So the engine also here gave, I think, an incredible line. Just knight c5, disconnecting this battery over here, and now this bishop is actually in fact hanging right here. This bishop is hanging, because now if bishop takes over here, then you just have this beautiful move, pawn takes, right? And if bishop takes there, white now cannot, if bishop takes there, then we'll just have this simplification of the position basically, and then rook takes there, right? So he could have done that, after bishop captures on b5, but instead he played bishop b7, and I played the best move here again, bishop d3, just bringing the piece back, and here he played a5, which was the best move as well. And the point is, should the knight here is sort of stuck unless I castle on d2, because bishop b4 will always win him a queen, right? Because of this diagonal over here. So bishop b4 will always win him a queen, because the queen and the king are on the exact same diagonal over there. So I did not go for that. Instead, here I played an interesting idea, h3. Now this is my point, right? If you look at white's bishop over here, it's controlling so many squares on this diagonal, so many squares on that diagonal. It's literally restricting the movement of this knight, the movement of this queen, and the movement of this bishop, right? Bishop on d3 is a monster. Like, this is a definition of a strong bishop in the middle of the game. So I took the time to play h3 here because I didn't want knight jumping into g4 and embarrassing my bishop here on e3, because I don't even have squares really to put it. I can't play bishop g4, he'll just exchange. I can't really play bishop c5 or anything like that. I'd actually have to kick the knight out of h3 and let him take and then castle or something like that. So that's why I took the time to play h3, which I thought was smart. But obviously the engine always finds something better. So here he played rook a d8, and I took this time now to castle, which is bad. You should never castle at move 16. King safety at the earliest is best, and white is practically advisable. But anyway, this was a rather complicated battle. And here he played bishop d6. Now, here is where I started to sort of play well positionally, so to speak. So I felt like that was an inaccuracy and he shouldn't have done it. I think there was some other way he should have played this position. But bishop d6 is doing nothing really, because that pawn is just too overprotected. So at knight c4, which hits the pawn on a5 along with the queen, and it's only guarded by the queen, and also hits the bishop in d6. Now he played rook a8 back, guarding the queen on a5. And now removing the most important piece, right? The black bishop, because it's the only bishop that can contest my black bishop. And it's a very strong piece. So takes, queen takes. Now here I saw that even if he's sort of like a pawn down, he needed to play queen b4, which forces a trade, right? Because I played knight h4. Now let me make you understand. Here I can play a3. And the point of this move is to discourage queen coming to b4 on this square. Because, so let me show you. I played knight h4. This is what I played in the game, and I'll explain this move. But here he has this incredible move, queen b4, forcing a queen exchange. Now this is a better holdable endgame because, one, I wouldn't want him to take and double up my structure, even though actually that's playable. And should I take him and he takes, at least if this happens, so you understand, this is a much drawable endgame. He's just a pawn down. He can play this endgame with much ease and probably survive, right? Keeping queens on the board sort of doesn't really give him a good fighting chance, and if anything, it favors the guy with a pawn up, because it allows me to be able to press the advantage. Now knight h4 has had a couple of moves. I wanted to push f4, f5, that type of stuff. Also, the queen is sitting here on d6. I felt like knight f5 was just brilliant to just anchor in the knight here. And should he play something like g6, now his dark squares basically will be very weak and vulnerable. Now my dark squared bishop all of a sudden becomes strong. It's headed over there, right? Maybe move away this bishop over here, swing the queen over that way. Such typical ideas, you know what I mean? So I thought knight h4 was really clever, preparing f4, but I soon quickly changed my mind immediately after the move c5. Now, you will realize here, number one, well, I didn't really change my mind, but there's no longer queen b4, which was still the right time to play, but he did not play it. And on top of that, I have moves like rook a d1, which is what I played next, I believe. Yes, rook a d1, just lining up the rook with the queen, because as soon as the bishop moves, I have an open file, right? And look at his pawn structure, right? This is weak, that's weak, that's weak. Well, that's not really weak, but this is pretty soft. Like, I can get to his pieces pretty soft. They're uncoordinated, they're all over the place. this is a good position for white. So he played queen c7, and I didn't want to play knight f5 immediately. I thought f3 and then knight f5, but then I realized there was a winning tactic, and he can't really touch my pawn on e4, which is attacked twice by the knight on f6 and the bishop on b7. So knight f5 anyway, and here I calculated the variation that g6, knight h6 check. If king here, then I play here, and then if takes, I will throw in this check first, forcing him to either this square or this square, and then trying to basically just open up this diagonal here as the queen is sitting here and go for checkmate. I don't know. This was an idea I had after playing knight f5, right? But also, this pawn is not hanging. It's protected by a tactic. Doesn't really matter. For example, he played knight takes. He played knight takes on e4, which now I responded bishop takes, and then bishop takes, and then knight d6 is the fork of the bishop on e4 and the rook on e8. And then he played an in-between move, bishop g5, because it's just gonna lose the bishop anyway. It's a desperado. Now you should understand here, I cannot take here, because if I take there, then he takes here, and then I take there, and this is, I think, even a worse position. I'm not quite sure really. Oh, actually, if I took the pawn, oh no, this was the line. So if bishop takes, white can just chill here. Now this bishop all of a sudden strong, and I cannot touch it, right? And if I take time to move, he can even just first gobble this pawn over here, and then I don't know. Yeah, how do you defend mate, right? I have to contend with this, so I can easily lose the game. On top of that, not to mention that the knight here is hanging. So that was not the right way to go about it. So after here, bishop takes, I played king takes g2, which is the right move. And then after queen c8 check, I just slide the queen to h2, getting out of any diagonal problems, because you can tell that he has ideas, which he did find in the game of rook e6 and then swinging the rook over here, right? Which my opponent did find. I was quite impressed with that. He has such ideas. So actually, to go back here, even if he takes with the bishop, you should understand that this tactic still works. Now you think if I take, he can take with the knight, but then I'll just go knight d6 anyway, right? This is the line, just knight d6 anyway. And here, if queen takes, there's this incredible bishop takes. Now this hits the rook in the corner and also the queen over here. Now if my opponent goes here, you just grab the queen, and if he grabs here, you grab there, and then check maybe to save the knight, king h2, and then at the end of it all, my position is much better. In fact, I felt like maybe this was a better line he had to go for. Yeah, it probably was indeed a better line, but like I said, these pawns here are all just weak, and I'm gonna be picking them off slowly, right? So, and not to mention that maybe knight c d4 will come, and then c3 kicking the knight out. I don't know, but I thought he had to go for this line, and he chose, of course, bishop takes on d4, which was a more perilous line, right? So here, even here after knight d6, you might think, but it seems like he has this knight e4. I just grab the rook there, hitting the queen, and if he does the same, I'm here again, and then if rook takes here, I think I can even take the bishop here. Yes, hitting the rook. Maybe rook comes here. Just so you understand, there's so many pieces hanging, and even at this point, this is just crazy variations. I can even play knight takes. So after knight takes, I can play knight takes, right? Now he has a choice to take back with the bishop, or if he goes here, attacking my knight, I can just take there. And at the end of all these trades, you will realize that white will always emerge a piece up or something, or better, right? There's so many lines going on. But he played, of course, the worst one, which we should go back to now. He played, well, let's go back to the original game. He played bishop takes on e4. I mean, knight takes instead, at which point I played bishop takes, and then knight d6. Then between move, king takes on g2, queen c6 check, king h2, rook e6. And then queen d3, just basically saying, Okay, bro, I'm gonna put my queen now in the game, right? I could have just moved the knight away, but this makes much more sense. And then he played queen f3. I thought he would still go rook g6, at which point either way I would have gone queen e4. And then he took, and then I took, hitting the pawn on c5 twice, and as well as it discovered attack on the knight here on d7. Played knight b6, knight takes on c5, hits the rook with tempo check. I mean, with tempo, not check, rook g6, b3, not allowing any counterplay, right? Controlling and restricting the movement on the knight of the knight to b3 because I don't want him coming in. And as you can see, his knight kind of like doesn't have squares, right, to go to. There are no really squares for the knight to head to. It's kind of boxed in to the one side of the board because my rook is just here. It's a monster rook. It's controlling this file. So I thought here I was doing pretty decently. And it turns out actually I was. So anyway, after b3 he played rook e8 and then knight d7 because I want to trade. I'm winning, right? He plays knight c8, which was a blunder. Then knight takes on e5. The knight is not hanging, it's not for free. Should he takes, there's bankrupt mate on rook d8, checkmate. And I'm also hitting the rook, I mean, on g6 with the knight. He plays rook e6, then knight c4, hits the a pawn, forcing him to push it forward. By the way, it's important to note, you could have pushed the a4 pawn earlier on in the game, but he decided not to. So just takes, I played h6, I played a5, this is pretty standard, f5, knight b6, also trying to go for trades here. He can play knight e7. He can also play knight b6 and go all for these lines. But I felt like, yeah, he doesn't have much play because then my pawn is just going to march a6, a7, and I promote because my knight on b6 is already controlling the a8 promotion square, right? And so here he plays a4. Now, it's important to know that bishop c5 and bishop d4 were both okay moves. It was going to prolong the game. In fact, bishop c5 was better because it restricts the black knight from landing on e7 or d6, because if it goes there, it's just going to die. But not immediately. I can delay it and then push a6, push a7. But I decided to, I came up with a way, which is the line we went through. I saw this whole line throughout here where I could exchange material easily, which was bishop takes on f4, knight takes on b6, a takes on b6, rook takes on a6, bishop c7, hitting the bishop, rook b2, and then rook d8, forcing an exchange of a pair of rooks off the board. So he took, I took, and then here he took the wrong pawn, in my opinion. Rook takes on c2, but either way, you need to understand, even if he played rook takes a2, I'll just play rook c1 and just start marching this pawn down the board with the help of this bishop, of course. However, the line he went for was rook takes on c2. Now, what does USSA say? If you have a passed pawn, you must push, baby, push. Passed pawns are to be pushed. It's uncontended, right? a4, and then he plays rook d6. Now, another brilliant move, bishop b6. And the point is, this bishop now is going to be anchored by this pawn here on a6 and also protect the pawn here on a2, and then it frees up this rook to go and bully the black king. That's why bishop b6 was the best move, which I played. Now rook a4, there's the ankle. a5, king f7. Here I could have played many other moves like stay active, rook c1, go harass his king, but I just really played simply. Rook e1 just cuts off the king from like over the half of the board right here. That was the idea, just cutting down the king. And yeah, I'm just basically going to march my king slowly in and just torture him, right? So he played g5, king g3, h4, h5, h4, g3. He can't do anything, king f4. I'm just going to march my king forward, gobble up the pawn, and have basically some sort of trousers or scissors. I don't know what that concept is called, and this is just clean. It's winning, right? He plays rook b2, and the point is, immediately when my king lands on the 5th rank with king either f5, g5, or e5, he wants to give me a check on b5. So rook e5, the rook is free, remember, and it's also hitting the pawn on h5. King g6, rook g5 check. He plays king h6. Now the king is completely paralyzed and out of the game. And here I played king f5, which is not flexible. I should have gone for king e5, and this is the point of king e5, right? At king e5 and then rook b5 check, I have this nice move, king d6, right? So should he take? Obviously, this is easily winning. I'm gonna win the pawn race, right? Just a6, a7, a8. I promote first. This is slow. So if like, just to show you, let me just demonstrate. Right, and as soon as the queen gets here, now I'm patrolling this whole diagonal. There's no way he's gonna promote and win, right? So that does not work, hence I had to play king d6. But the idea of king d6 also is that if he goes back, because he cannot really stay on this rank because my rook is there, it's either he takes my rook or he goes back. Should he go back, let's say rook b3 for example, now I can just smoothly play king c7 and escort basically this pawn down the board while my king is here, right? But I didn't go for that. I didn't go for king e5, which was not really a good move. I went for king f5 instead, but it's still winning. But king e5 was more clean. And also, should I still want to go for like potential mate threats, should you understand, after king e5 I can play king f6, because then he doesn't have any more checks, right, instead of king d6. There's so many ideas here that I could have played, but I didn't go for them, right? So you understand, for example, after the king e5, rook b5 check, instead of king d6, I can even play king f6. Because now if he takes, I'm going to take with check here, right? So if he goes back, let's say, let's give him rook b3 again, I can be patient. Like, this position can be played extremely patient. I can even play rook over here. Oh no, I can't play rook over there because of the check on f3. But the point is, I can try to like weave a net, maybe like with bishop c5, I don't know, and weave a mating net. I can even come here immediately, cutting off the rook from accessing this f3 square, right? It can't even access this f6 square, and I'm threatening all of nasties. So I could have even played king f6, but that's not what I played. So after king f5, our opponent played rook d2. And here I played bishop. Oh, I played a6. You can't really catch the pawn. Rook a5 check. So I played king e4, which was also not the best move. I rejected king e6 because I was seeing ghosts, and king e6 was the best move, right? Because if here, I thought he could stay here, and if I played something like this, he could take check, and then this, and then that. But then, as you will soon realize, he can't play rook b5 because my rook sees his rook. I'll just capture it. So this is, I rejected king e6 because of this, but afterwards I realized I shouldn't have because of this. So I played a rather very passive approach, king e4, right? And he played rook d6. So also here, so you understand, I could have just played a7, and then after rook takes, I just promote with queen, right? I could have played this, but I was number one, annoyed that he was not resigning, and we're sitting there playing this game and it's a losing position. He didn't want to resign, so I played bishop e3. No, you cannot have my bishop. I don't care. You can't even have my pawn, because if rook takes, pawn on a6, I have this move. Rook a5, discovered check on the king, and I mean, come on, this is just miserable, right? So after bishop e3, instead he played king h7. I played rook takes on h5 check. He played king g6, which was his mistake. He had to play king g7. That loses quicker. The move he played. Then here I just played rook h6, and then just march the pawn down the board. There's nothing he can do. Oh no. And just march the pawn down the board. Instead, he played king g6, which lost quickly to rook h6 check, and here he resigned. So the rest of this line was actually an engine line, how the game could have gone with king g7, rook takes on d6, king f7, a7, king e7, bishop c5, king e8, queen a8 check, king f7. Yeah, this, I'll just click the forward arrow. This was an engine line that it gave to basically conclude the game. So that was round one. I was feeling pretty good. Relatively an easy game. I wasn't struggling. I was not even down on time. I enjoyed it. It was positional. I sort of squeezed the advantage slowly and slowly, built it up. And overall, I had a really beautiful game. I genuinely had a beautiful game. And this is the graph here, as you can see. From this move onwards, just going all the way up here. I mean, I think yellow means missed wins or something, but like, all of this was just a great build-up of the advantage, if you look at my graph here, right? And going forward, like, all of it was just clean. It was a clean game overall. So I really enjoyed this game. I hope you guys also enjoyed it. Yeah, it was a beautiful game. This was round one. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being here. Be on the lookout for the second recap, round 2. I'll be posting them, I think 2 videos a day. Also, if you want to read blog posts, I'll be posting them on my blog post as well, on my blog, I mean. You can have a look at that. There's a link down in the description. Also, please do leave a like if you like this content, and tell me what you guys would like to see from me in the future in the comment section. If you want me covering specific openings, but most likely I'll be covering the ones I play. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next one. Until next time, kings and queens, I'll see you. Cheers.